Hello everyone and welcome to episode 43 of our game dev tutorials. Today I want to do another shader. So it's a throb or pulse shader, however you want to state it. Basically, like when you get hit, your character will flash a couple times. You can set up the variables however many times and however fast you want. But it occurred to me that we haven't done a shader in a while. The last one was in episode 13. So if you are interested in how to get your shader set up in the first place, make sure you check that one out. This tutorial will not go over this basic setup of a shader, but it will go over adding a second one. But before we get started, I want to remind you guys to hit that like button down below and to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you've watched quite a few of these videos, and to ring that notification bell to get the notification on new videos coming up. And then lastly, Patreon, if you are so inclined to do so. It definitely helps me out, and it'd be great to have you aboard the Patreon team as well. Alright, so let's go over what we're going to do today. So first we're going to create the shader. We're going to start with a base from the last one. I think it's like normal flat or something like that. I forget exactly what we called it, but then we're going to add the shader to the project. We're going to discuss how to change between the shaders. It's actually quite simple, but I just want to go over it just in case people don't know. And then we're going to do some touch-up work, because this is actually going to cause some weird flickering bugs, or it's going to start using the wrong shader at the wrong times sometimes. So we will need to touch that up. And then we'll test it. We might test it here and then here. We'll see how the time goes. Okay? All right. Let's see. First things first, let's get our shader. And so this is just a copy of the shader from episode 13. So we're going to load that up. And then I have one that I completed to make sure that I do it right here. So we are going to not need any of this, because this is basically asking how big the image is, which you don't necessarily know, so we passed that in, the size that it is and the size we want it to be. That way we could do a good, or at least a decent, anti-aliasing, which was the goal of last time. We don't need those this time. We just need one, and it is going to be a sine function. So let's see what I called it. I just want to call it the same thing, sine loc. So this thing bugs out. It's old. Sometimes you have to do that to get it to fix. Okay. Sine loc. Okay. So what this is the position within a sine curve that you're in. So let me explain sine for those that don't know. I hope that you guys all knew. I hate when that stuff's happening. Wrong thing. New. Okay. So a sine curve, right? Boy, I'm gonna get this right or wrong. Hopefully I'm getting between cosine and sine. I'm pretty sure I remember, but I know the basics. So let's make a graph. Boy, it would be nice if that would draw. There we go. Click there, click there. Okay, so this is our graph. Boy, that's just not, it does not want to go away, does it? Alright, whatever. Alright, so sine, I believe, starts at 0. It goes up to 1. Swap that around again. It goes up to 1. Down to -1. This is pi, and this is 2 pi. Okay, so sine kind of goes like this in a uniform manner, and it would be equidistant, and then it comes down, and let's try that again. Okay, these would be equidistant. This one's too fat, this one points up in the wrong spot, but you get the point. So at 0, it's 0. At pi over 2, At pi over 2, it's 1. At pi, it's 0. At 3 pi over 2, it's negative 1. And then it comes back here and it repeats. This is a sine curve, right? Cosine would start at 1 and then be 0 and then be negative 1 and then be 0 and then be 1 again. So that's a sine curve. So why are sine curves awesome? Well, sine curves are awesome because they repeat. You feed it in a float, and you are going to get, as that float increases, you are going to get a repeating, an equidistant repeating pattern. Okay, so we are going to use a sine curve for this project. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions about sine, make sure you ask, and then we'll get to it. Okay, so we have this shader. We swapped out our floats to just the one. This is a much simpler shader overall. So this is not about having a super complicated shader. I'll do a more complicated one in not too long, maybe even within the next few. I'd like to do more with shaders for you guys. They are very powerful, so we'll get to more. But in this case, we're just going to do a simple shader. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to just remove all of this. This is all dealing with the anti-aliasing and using multiple colors that are close to the pixel that you're looking at to interpolate between them and get a more cohesive structure or more cohesive image with less loss, though it's an incorrect image technically. Okay, so let's get rid of all that. We do still need to do color. We're going to get rid of this. Like I said, this is a really simple shader. We do not want to act on clear images, or pixels, I mean. So, first things first, we are going to test for that. So, this is the pixel that we're dealing with, the color of the pixel we're dealing with. So, the alpha value, which is A, we need to check and see. I think it's 0, not 1, right? So, not 0. Yep. Okay. Now, I got that wrong when I was doing the initial test for this. So, 0 is clear. 1 is opaque. Don't ask me why I got that wrong, but I did. So, anyway, we only want to act on colors that are not 0. So, for all other colors, we're going to do this, which I'm going to type out. So, else, just return exactly what is in here, but we're using color to do that. So, color equals float 4. You don't say new in shader language or HLSL, which is what we're dealing with. So, now it's just this. R, G, B, A. Okay? So, this is dealing with everything not colored. Now we're going to deal with everything colored. So, what I want for this pulse shader is that the colors that come out of the image interpolate to the filter color. So in this case, I'm going to be passing in red, which is just going to be 255.00. So what is interpolating? Well, what that's going to do is it's going to say, all right, so we have a color that's above red, we have red, and we have colors that are below red. When I say below and above, everything's out of 255, right? So red is 255 in the R slot, 0, 0, right? So if you feed in, if let's say our pixel color is this, just 100, 100, 100, okay? We want this to go up to 255 over the time period of sine, right? When it's 1, then we want this to be 255, and when it's 0, we want it to be the same, and so on and so forth. Okay, you'll see it working. And then we want this to go to 0 and this to go to 0. So to do that, we have a little bit of math to do. So color equals float 4 again. And then the last one is going to just be text color.a. So you can put that in right now. And the base, how do I say this? The function that we're trying to do, the base math here, is going to be, we want to know what our sign loc is, so we have that. We want to interpolate between the other data, right? And I already said that. I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. But it looks like this. Okay, so let me explain this before I type it out. You have the texture color, which is coming in, and we need to add to it, and this is how you interpolate. It's just a distance formula times some percentage. Okay, that's all it is. So, So the distance of R from the base color times how much of that distance we want to allow, and we add that to our color. It's very simple stuff. Okay, so we have our base color. R plus, that's the interpolated bit there, times sign loc. So the location on the sine curve. Okay, what was our distance? Well, it's text color dot R minus the filter color here. So filter color dot R. Right? Alright, so that's R. We need to do G and B. They're the exact same thing, but with G and B's. So R ends there, so this is G, 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 and B, B, B. It's a very simple shader. That's pretty much all there is to it. I'm going to save it. I didn't start this up before, so give me a second. I got to start up. Oh, there's my build project. Okay. Make it so I can see things. I wish it would save that, but it doesn't. Okay, so shaders. We have 2D shaders, and I have one called Throb here. We need to rename this Mamma Jamma, so let's save it as Throb 2. Because I do want you guys to get to see it. The actual one that we're working on. So that is in the file that I opened earlier. Give me a second. There we go. So Throb 2, we are going to just place it in right here. Okay, so we have that. We're going to build it. Hopefully it builds. Nope. Okay. What did we do wrong? I am missing that on line 33. Line 33. Oh, it's a semicolon. It's actually what it's missing. Okay, let's save that. This is finicky, so I'm just going to delete it because then it works every time. Not the greatest of menus, but it works as long as you work with it correctly. Alright, rebuild. Bam, succeeded. Good. Now let me open that up. Bin shaders, Throb 2. So it's right there. So we are going to drop that into here. So Throb 2 into here. I'm going to rename it to Throb because that's what you should probably call it, and that's what I'm going to hand you guys. Again, I will put these in the description, so don't worry about it. So Throb, is there. Now we need to start working on getting everything lined up. So first things first, we need to load the shader. Right now we have in game globals, we have our shader. No, not game globals. It's in regular globals. Sorry. So we have our shader here. So we're just going to say throb effect. Okay. And then we, in main, I believe it is where we are declaring that. Usually that's where I will load my first shaders. Later, if you have lots of shaders, then you're going to probably have to load them at separate times, not just at load time, because, you know, they will eventually start causing your load time at the beginning to go up a lot. Alright, so this is throb. Oh, you know what we need to do that I didn't do? I don't know why I don't do this with shaders like I do with images, but everything has to be content copy of newer, so fix that. And throb. Okay, so, and then this has to be throb. Okay, so that is loading. We now are loading our shader in. How do we use our shader? Great question. So, if you remember, in attackable object, we have this. This is using our other shader, right? So we need a time when we're using this shader and a time when we're using another shader. So we need an if statement. And this is our default, so I'm going to put it in else. And so we'll fill that out in a minute. But I wanted to do this easy piece real quick to explain how it works. So this is signloc, and this is not signloc. So I'm going to delete this for a second and leave it gone, and we'll fill that out in a little bit. We want that error to remember to come back, and the color is correct. Okay, but we want red, right? So we're feeding in red. Okay, so this right here, oh, this has to be throb effect. This line right here is what applies the new shader. I told you it was simple. It's that simple. So whichever shader you have called this on right there is the shader that's active. Okay, so it applies these parameters, but it also activates this shader. So if this one's active right here, changing this out will activate this one and not this one. So we'll have the ability now on attackable objects to run this shader in a second. So first things first, let's say bool throb. Throb equals false. And we'll put that right here. So if throbbing, or I guess throbbing, maybe. Let's do ing. Yeah. Throbbing. Then we're running this guy here. Okay? Pretty simple. We'll leave that error. It's fine. We are going to need a timer for how long we want to throb. Public MC timer. Throb timer. Equals new. And then however long you want. Let's just call it a second for right now. You guys can adjust these values however you want. But this is a good setup here. Okay, so here we're going to say, how are we going to update this? Well, we only want to update that timer when it's throbbing. So if throbbing. Then we want to throb timer dot update timer. If throb timer dot test. So if it's done throbbing, we need to say throbbing equals false. Throb timer dot reset to 0. Okay, so we haven't yet set up how throbbing gets set to true, but when it is set to true, we're going to run the throbbing timer, and when the throbbing timer is completed, then we stop throbbing. Okay, so how are we going to decide when to start throbbing? Well, we want to throb when we get hit. So here's get hit. Throbbing equals true. And then you can reset throbbing here, the throbbing timer here, if you want it to reset every time you get hit. I do, so I'm going to put that in. If you don't want it to reset each time you get hit, then don't put this line in. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so we have set up throbbing, we have made our shader, we are ready to do it, except for we don't know where we are on the sine curve. Okay, so that is the last thing we need to do. And so right here, what we're going to do is we are going to float, because we need it to be a float. Math dot sine. Oh, not that sign. That sign. Sine function. Okay, so I told you put a float into the sine function in order to get a value back out, right? That's, or a double. It's saying double here, but a float's fine. All right, so what is this sine function? Well, we want to use the timer, because that's what we're using, to adjust the float. And we want to then multiply that percentage of that timer times some amount of pi. The amount of pi that you have will be how many times it flashes. Okay? So, first let's get the timer part set. So we have float throb timer. Whoops. Throb timer dot timer. So this is the amount of time that has elapsed. Float throb timer dot. Okay, so this is how long the timer is good for. So how long the timer lasts. So in this case, that's 1 second. If you don't put floats in here, this will not work because they're ints, and if you divide ints by an int, you're going to get 1 or 0 pending, and that's not good. We want the smooth curve. Okay? All right, so we have that, and then we need to add. Well, I'll explain. Let's do the multiplication part first, and then we'll talk about the add. So here we have math.pi times some number. And remember, for every 2 numbers, you will... So every 2 pi, you will make a full cycle. So I want to do this just 3 times. And the reason I'm going to do it just 3, I would say 4, because that would be 2 whole cycles, except for I want to start red. To start red, let's go back to our Photoshop file. To start red, we need to start at pi over 2. So as soon as you get hit, you start red. To do that, we need to add math dot pi over 2. And then floatarize that one. So yeah, that's there. Let's build and see if it still has the same errors. Doesn't like from double to bool. It's float. That's what's wrong. Sometimes it gives very confusing errors. It was talking about doubles and bools. I guess it wanted to double to that. Alright, but anyway, so that gives us our sine loc position. And that should throb for us when we get hit. So let's give that a shot. Here we go. So what we're going to do is get hit on purpose. Oh, that didn't work, huh? Well, I will check to see what we did wrong. Let's see. Let's check these parentheses. Maybe I got them wrong. Oh, I did. This is supposed to wrap all of this, so let's put another print around it. Alright, let's give that a try. There we go. See how it has like a kind of a double pulse to it? So it goes all the way to red, and then it goes kind of weird, and then back to red. That was the goal. You can't really do that with a shade. Also, notice it's working on everything. That doesn't die right away, that is. Oh. Ooh, what happened? Huh. I don't know what that was. Some little bug we'll have to fix later. Maybe I walked outside of the... No? I don't know. I don't know what that was. But we will figure that bug out at another time. Right now, let's see. If this breaks it. Nope, it doesn't on this one. Oh, there we go. See the flickering on the trees? That's because it's staking with the Throb shader sometimes. Okay? So let's fix that real fast. That one I did plan on fixing. So, all we have to do is take this, which is our normal shader, and then go to our tree, which is here, and create a whole, let's just copy this whole thing, and then remove the other parts. It'll be faster that way. So we just need a new draw function, and then we gotta just gut this crap out of it. And then we run it. Oh, that's some lag. But there's that. And then now, if we're shooting this, it doesn't affect the trees anymore. So, anyway, that is your Throb shader. It's not the craziest, most awesomest shader on the planet, but I like it, and I like to have it. So, now you do, and you know how to run multiple shaders on your project. Alright guys, I will see you guys next time. If you liked the video, make sure that you hit that like button, because it really does help spread the videos, and this channel's been a little slow lately, so please, it would be very helpful if you guys would help me to spread it by hitting that like button. Subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell, guys. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.